Hi, welcome to Detours, Understanding Acquired Brain Injury. This is Unit 2, and this is Chapter 6, and we're going to be talking about meiosis. This is the second half of the first video. We talked about crossing over, and now we're going to talk about actually how the sex cells, the eggs, sperm, are produced. The reason we needed to talk about crossover first is because it kind of prevents a lot of genetic errors. And so we got into the specifics of how segments are swapped in that process. So let's get into meiosis and now how, after doing gene swapping through crossover, how eggs and sperm are specifically produced. As I mentioned before, the process of mitosis is similar in many ways to meiosis. And so we're not going to repeat the steps of mitosis. We're not going to talk about like how chromosomes copy themselves, as the process is identical. And we discussed crossover. So we'll just mention that these occur in a given stage. Meiosis only applies to sex cells or germ cells or gametes, as they're also called. No other cells in the body go through this process. Gametes have the unique role of reproducing the organism and producing a unique organism, different from its parents. Again, we're not clones. Gametes are produced in special organs, which you mentioned about gonads. If you'd like a review, check out Unit 2 and Chapter 5. So meiosis itself happens in two stages, meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. And the reason is so that we end up with half the number of chromosomes that you start with, and that you end up with twice as many cells as you would in mitosis. So 4 cells with half the number of chromosomes. And the reason obviously being that your sexual partner will provide the other set of chromosomes. So let's get into this. First is interphase. We discussed this before. And interphase or germ cells go through the 3 sub-stages, just like in mitosis. There's growth, G1 or gap. This is a busy stage when the germ cells go through development and producing the enzyme, the structural support, the proteins necessary to allow the cell to divide. There's only one set of chromosomes right now in that cell. And that set, one comes from each parent. The chromosomes have not duplicated yet. Synthesis, this is when all the necessary DNA for the process is replicated. So now you've got duplication. G2 is not present in meiosis, since the goal is to reduce the number of chromosomes in the cell, not increase it. Okay, meiosis 1, the stages are called reductive division for that reason, because we're not going to be doubling up. Okay, so prophase 1, the chromosomes will condense and homologous pairs form into the synapsids. Remember how we talked about non-sister chromatids before. Okay, so crossover, that happens in prophase 1, and that is the exchange between your parents, your moms and your dads, homologous sections of chromosomes in order to provide more genetic diversity. Okay. The germ cell's nuclear envelope breaks down, preparing for metaphase 1. Homologous chromosomes align at the metaphase plate, the equator, just like in mitosis. Okay, anaphase 1, the homologous chromosomes will separate and move to opposite poles. The sister chromatids, which were replicated, they're still there. The copies you made in S1, they remain together, but they're aside. Here. All right, so telophase 1 and cytokinesis. Okay, 2 haploid cells form, and each has sister chromatids in them. more work needs to be done. They completely separate and prepare to start the next phases in division. Okay? Prophase 2. No DNA replication occurs during the second stage of meiosis 2. The centrioles will migrate to the poles of the two daughter cells, and they'll extend those spindle fibers that we talked about in mitosis. Okay? The spindle fibers will bond and pull the sister chromatids. These are the copies. We'll pull them apart from their kinetochores. The sister chromatids are pulled to opposite poles of these daughter cells that are starting to form. Remember, the daughter cells are also now going to be haploid with recombined chromosomes. All right. Finally, telophase 2 in cytokinesis. The cells are now, all of them, and we've got 4, are haploid and have 23 chromosomes total, and you've got 23 chromosomes, not pairs, but 23 individual chromosomes in all 4 of these cells. And you've got 4 cells which result from meiosis. The difference between egg and sperm are the end result of the process of meiosis. Okay, we'll discuss that in the next chapter. And when we talk about development fertilization process of the egg, and quickly, really briefly talk about embryology, that is a whole other thing. And yes, at some point we will get into embryology, but this is technically far more complicated as far as how this process goes. But this is meant to be more quick an overview because it shares a lot in common with the process of mitosis. Okay? So, click like, subscribe. Don't forget that bell icon and to share this video with anyone who may find it helpful, okay? Please post any questions or comments below. See you in, Unit 2, Chapter 7, Chromosomes and Genes, oh baby. Because that's what we're going to be talking about. All right? Again, please click like, subscribe. Don't forget the bell. We'll see you next time. Bye.